I'm not really a photographer, I'm a dog groomer. I take lots of photos of dogs all day to put on my Facebook and Instagram. It's my thing, if that makes sense. A cut and a photo with every appointment. I very seldom shoot things other than dogs, even if I have a nice setup. A friend got married a few days ago and wanting to save money, asked if I'd shoot it for them. I told him it's not really my forte, but he convinced me by saying he didn't care if they were perfect. They were on a shoestring budget, and I agreed to shoot it for $250, which is nothing for a 10-hour event. On the day of, I'm driving around following the bride as she goes from appointment to appointment before the ceremony, taking photos along the way. I shoot the ceremony itself, and during the reception, I'm shooting speeches and people mingling. I started around 11 a.m. and was due to finish around 7:30 p.m. Around 5 p.m., food was being served, and I was told I cannot stop to eat because I need to be a photographer. In fact, they didn't save me a spot at any table. I'm getting tired and at this point kind of regretting doing this for next to nothing. It's also unbelievably hot. The venue is in an old Veterans Legion, and it's like 110F and there's no air conditioner. I told the groom I need to take off for 20 minutes to get something to eat and drink. There's no open bar or anything, I can't even get water, and my 2 water bottles are long empty. He tells me I need to either be a photographer or leave without pay. With the heat, being hungry, being generally annoyed at the circumstances, I asked if he was sure, and he said yes, so I deleted all the photos I took in front of him and took off saying I'm not his photographer anymore. If I was to be paid $250, honestly, at that point, I would have paid $250 just for a glass of cold water and somewhere to sit for 5 minutes. Was I the butthole? They went right on their honeymoon, and they've all been off of social media, but a lot of people have been posting on their wall asking about photos with 0 responses. Followed up about a month later, I previously made a post you can find here and want to provide an update. This is a throwaway account, so I'm sorry for not replying to every message, but I hope this answers many of the questions people had. Immediately after the wedding, they went off for their honeymoon. They went to a cottage up north and didn't use social media for a week. In that time, they got lots of requests for photos on Facebook, and I didn't reply to anyone because, to me, this was done, and I didn't want the headache of dealing with the fallback. I don't know a lot of these people. It's their circle of friends, so I thought it was best that they handled it. The bride contacted me when they returned and asked me my side of the story. I don't know when the groom spilled the beans, but he wasn't truthful about it. He told her I had camera problems and lost the photos. I told her plainly what happened and told her that while I felt guilty, it's no way to treat someone doing them a favor. She wasn't in the know about any of this and asked if there was any way we could mend this. We got to talking, and I've agreed to do a reshoot for some photos later in the season. She wants some photos of just them in an outdoor shoot, photos of the rings, some artsy-fartsy shots, and that's it. She offered me the original $250, and I agreed under the condition I bail at word 1 of crap from either of them. As for the original photos, I offered to bring my SD card to a place that could attempt to recover them, but at their cost, and she declined. Word did get out on social media about some of this, and we agreed to sweep it under the rug and try to diffuse or play down what happened. Of the few comments I did read, they were wholly against me because the story is twisted with the "her camera died" narrative the groom spun. I'm upset, but not enough to make a big deal of it. None of them even know my name. I did make 2 interesting connections, though. The DJ was privy to the situation. He was the person I vented to originally, and he asked if I'd shoot their band at an upcoming event. Additionally, the minister asked if I'd like to shoot some promotional images of his church and choir. Not sure if I'm cut out for anything but pet stuff, but it's nice to have got something out of this ordeal at least. And a final update. A common sentiment in the previous thread was I was a doormat, and I know that. But if I can justify it just one time, this was never about the money or the people or anything. I'm experienced with photography, but only really in one subject area, pet portraits. And I would gladly jump at any opportunity to practice and gain more experience and exposure in other areas of photography. It's extremely validating going from volunteer work to paid work, even if the pay is a small pittance to what it should be. Even if they offered me nothing, I would have gladly accepted the opportunity just so I can practice more and try new things. Plus, it was under the assumption they didn't care they were perfect photos. I got the bride to correct the record on Facebook that there was a disagreement between her husband and I. I don't know if anyone has connected the dots yet to an article or articles they might have read, But a lot of people were upset and actually taking my side for once. The bride said we all worked it out, which sort of happened, and we'll have some photos to post soon. For my update, I bailed on the shoot. It was meant to be later in November so they could have snowy photos, but a few nights ago they asked if I could do it the day before yesterday. I wasn't doing anything, so I agreed. I picked out a location I thought was nice, as there's lots of wineries and vineyards in our area, plus it was relatively close to me. I meet them there, and they're both prettied up and ready to go. We congregate around my car while I'm unloading my lights and gear bag, and I talk about how the shoot is going to go. I laid out the specific shots I was going to take, then where the lights would be, their poses, etc. I asked the husband if he could help me carry sandbags, and he declined, saying my job is photographer, not him. Something in me snapped, and I just started loading my stuff up again and got into my car despite their protests. I remarked that when they both get married a second time, don't contact me to shoot it. Rolled my windows up, locked my doors, and off I went. The first thing I did when I got home was block everyone. This relationship was already threadbare, but this just cemented them as awful people I do best to not associate with. All told, my investment in this shoot was maybe 30 minutes making a game plan on what shots and what to bring, and a 5 mining drive each way. That is, if you don't count my previous day wasted. At the very least, I find solace. I wasted their time and money on makeup, etc., if even a little. As well, I'm learning I'm really not cut out for this stuff. I need more experience, in particular dealing with clients, before I take on this kind of work, because I'm quickly learning I am hating this aspect of it. As an aside, I don't like many of the people here on Reddit, either publicly or through messages. As well, some YouTubers who have covered my post who try to gatekeep photography. It makes me very sad to read things like, I'm not a real photographer. While it's true I'm not super experienced, these kinds of comments really dig deep when I'm doing my best and trying to learn more about photography. I've been using a digital single-lens reflex camera for about 10 years, photographing pets and some small events along the way. Nothing as prestigious as shooting weddings, sure, but just because someone doesn't shoot photos professionally doesn't mean they're by default a bad photographer.
Sorry for the long post. I didn't realize how much I had to say until I got it all typed out. Thanks in advance to anyone who reads all this. I've been with my girlfriend Jordan for a little over 2 years. We live together and we have 2 cats. Up until this weekend, I genuinely thought everything was perfect in our relationship, which I know is what everyone says in these posts, but I really was thinking that I was going to ask her to marry me sometime in the next year. We don't ever get into arguments. Jordan is very sweet and easygoing, and normally we just mesh well on everything. Honestly, if everything in our relationship hadn't been so good up until now, I probably would have just broken up with her this weekend. But because things have truly been so perfect, I'm not sure if maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion about what to do because my feelings got hurt. The other person who's important in this story is Jordan's friend Mark. She's known Mark for their whole lives because they both grew up in the same small religious community. Jordan isn't part of that religion anymore. She decided to leave the church when she was, I think, 19 and moved to the state that we live in now. Mark still is in the religion and apparently takes it really seriously. I'm told he now works for the church back in Jordan's hometown. Also, as far as I know, Mark is the only person from the religious community that Jordan still talks to besides her parents, which I'm mentioning because I now think it could be a red flag. So on Saturday, I met Mark for the first time because he was in our city and Jordan wanted us all to have dinner together. At this point, I want to say, I will admit that when we were first dating, I found out that Jordan had a best friend who was a guy I didn't really like, especially because it seemed like they were on FaceTime with each other a lot. But since it was a childhood friend and they mostly didn't see each other in person, I just trusted Jordan that Mark was only a friend and didn't let it bother me, and eventually I got over it. So, when we were going to dinner, I wasn't jealous or suspicious of Mark at all. If anything, I was somewhat excited to finally be meeting him since I've been hearing about him for 2 years. But then, the way Jordan and Mark acted at dinner is what convinced me that there's something going on there other than just being best friends. I honestly don't even know how to describe it, except to say that I've never seen two people act more obviously like they were in love with each other. They literally would not stop touching each other. They were constantly touching each other's arms and shoulders, and at some points, they were actually even holding hands. They completely left me out of the conversation and were laughing about inside jokes. And every time they'd laugh, they'd do this thing where they put their foreheads together, or that was when they'd be holding hands. And then also, they were just looking at each other in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. It was honestly even worse than the touching. It just wasn't how anyone would look at somebody they're supposedly just friends with. I'm 100% sure that every stranger looking at our table thought that Jordan and Mark were the couple and that I was her brother or something. I felt like a third wheel the whole time. And Jordan didn't even notice how awkward she was making it for me because she was way too focused on Mark and all the attention she was getting from him. And that's really not like Jordan at all. Usually, she's a lot more considerate and would notice immediately if I wasn't having a good time or if she was accidentally being rude and excluding someone at the table. So it was genuinely really jarring to be sitting there with her and Mark and basically feeling like I didn't know my girlfriend at all. It was like he turned her into a completely different person who didn't even care that I was alive. So finally, at one point when Jordan got up to go to the bathroom, I just said to Mark, "So are you into my girl, or what's going on here?" "Mark, nothing's going on at all. That ship sailed a long time ago." Me, "What does that mean? Did you guys date at some point?" Mark, "No, we never did." And then when she left the church, we both knew it meant that we were never going to. And we've accepted being in each other's lives as friends. There's nothing else going on at all. Me, that makes it sound like the only reason you're not together is because she left the church. And all Mark did was shrug. Me, well, what if she came back to the church? Would you marry her? Mark, oh, she's not going to do that. You might as well ask what would happen if a bicycle had 6 tires. And so then when Jordan came back to the table, Mark said to her, "OP wants to know if we'd be married if you weren't a godless heathen." Jordan, why? Did you two call your mom while I was gone? And then she and Mark both just laughed about it and changed the subject. So because of dinner and that conversation and everything else that I've written about in this post, I really feel like Jordan and Mark are in love with each other and not just best friends like they say. And the only reason they aren't together is because they can't compromise about their religion. I think Jordan thinks that because she's okay with that decision, she expects me to be okay with being her second choice. And in the meantime, she's actually secretly wanting to be with Mark. So that makes me think that I should probably obviously just have self-respect and break up with her, because I shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who would rather be with somebody else. But then, the problem for me is that our relationship has been so perfect, and Jordan has always treated me so well, except for this one night. The only time she's ever acted like this was on the one occasion that Mark was around in person. Normally, even when she's talking to him all the time, she's never made me feel this way. So the one hand I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't matter what Jordan's feelings are for Mark. As long as he isn't going to be around, it doesn't actually seem to affect our relationship. So maybe I just need to cool off and go back to trusting her that they are indeed only friends, even if it seems to be true that they have complicated feelings for each other. Or should I just end things? Update: I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night. I do still think I was right to be upset about what I saw happening at dinner on Saturday, and Jordan didn't disagree with me about that. But I think I did jump to the wrong conclusion, that it meant that she secretly actually wanted to be with Mark more than she wanted to be with me. Now that we've talked it out, I don't think there's a reason to end what's otherwise the best relationship I've ever had, and I'm glad that I didn't just immediately trust my instincts, because there was more going on with the situation that I didn't really understand that Jordan has since told me, and now I do feel like she can be given some grace in this situation, assuming nothing like this ever happens again. So, Thanks for the advice, especially for everyone who told me to just talk to her before I made a big decision. So, when we talked, I decided to take the main piece of advice that I got from everyone and start by telling Jordan that my feelings were hurt by the way she treated me at dinner with Mark, and then see how the conversation went from there. It turned into a very long talk, so I don't want to try to remember exact quotes and get them wrong, but here are the important things. I repeated to Jordan some of what I wrote in the post and said that I felt excluded by her and Mark, especially because they were being overly touchy-feely with each other, to the point where it made me uncomfortable. Jordan seemed surprised, like she didn't even notice that she and Mark were touching each other that much, but then she thought about it and said that I was right and apologized. She said that Mark is always really touchy with everybody and not just her. I asked, and so she didn't even think about it, but that she wished I would have said something at the time, because she didn't realize they were being that obnoxious. I said that was part of what bothered me, because I thought that normally she would have noticed something like that, but she was acting so different around Mark and not paying any attention to anything else, including how I was feeling, that it was, honestly, just made me question which one of us she cared about more, or if she cared about him as more than just a friend. Jordan apologized more and said that she could understand why it would look that way to me, but that she loves me and cares more about me than anyone else in the world, and that she didn't mean to act like that or make me feel that way. She said that she was trying to not make Mark feel like a third wheel because of being a single guy out with a couple, but obviously it backfired and just made me feel like the third wheel instead, which wasn't what she wanted to do either. After that, Jordan explained a lot to me about her history with Mark, and basically, as she explained it, she said that she fully admits she cares about him as more than just a normal friend, but she says that it's not in a romantic way. She said that's why she always specifically refers to him as her best friend, and not just as her friend, and said that she would use the phrase, "he's like my brother," if it weren't for the fact that she once had an actual brother, so she won't use that phrasing for anyone else. According to Jordan, the main thing that happened to make her and Mark so close was that when she was 17, she tried to end herself, and that was actually when everyone else in the community stopped talking to her, and Mark was the only person who didn't. For the next couple of years, until she moved, he was literally her only friend, and she said that he checked on her every single day to make sure she stayed alive, which is also when they got into the habit of talking on the phone so much. And also, apparently, during this time, Mark's parents thought they were dating and made a big deal about how they shouldn't be, and that's why she made that remark during dinner. Apparently, calling Jordan a godless heathen is something that Mark's mom said. I did tell Jordan that Mark basically said to me that he thought the two of them would be married if she had stayed in the church. And I asked her if she thinks that maybe Mark is in love with her, even if she doesn't feel the same way. She said definitely not, and I don't think she was being dishonest. I really don't agree with her, but I think she genuinely believes that Mark isn't into her in any way apart from friendship. Her opinion of the situation is that she also thinks she and Mark would eventually have gotten married if she had never left the church or moved, but from her perspective, it would have been more because of peer pressure than anything else, and she doesn't think it would necessarily have been a good thing. She thinks Mark was just being honest about that, and that possibly, from his perspective, he thinks he and Jordan would have made a good couple, but he's probably thinking that because he's just assuming that in that scenario, she'd be the perfect church wife, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be a good couple. But then the big thing that happened at the end of the conversation is that Jordan told me that Mark is coming back through our city on his way home from this trip, and so she was going to invite him to hang out with the two of us again, but she said that if I'm going to be uncomfortable with him around, then she won't ask him. A lot of people were saying that if she didn't offer to cut contact with him or to cut down on contact with him, it meant that she valued him over me, So the fact that she'd brought up on her own that she wouldn't invite him to dinner with us again because I didn't like it seemed like a really good sign to me. Based on everything else that she said, I do understand why she didn't offer to totally stop being friends with him. And I wouldn't expect her to after what she told me about what happened when she was a teenager. So now I'm deciding to take Jordan's word for it that although she and Mark are weirdly close, it's for the reasons that she explained to me and not because she's in love with him. I think the fact that she was immediately apologetic instead of defensive was good, and the way she explained everything did make sense to me. I don't necessarily trust Mark, but I do think I can trust Jordan. But I am going to watch and see if it seems like she's still talking to him as much as she used to, or if anything changes or sounds different. I'm not going to be controlling and tell her that she can't talk to him or that she has to talk to him less, but I want to see if me talking to her about all of this causes her to act any differently at all. I'm kind of thinking she might realize on her own that the way Mark acts towards her actually does seem like he likes her more than a friend now that I've brought it up, but I don't know. It could be that things just go back to exactly the way they were before, and I won't know if anything has actually changed until the next time Mark is around in person. But I don't think that's something I should keep worrying about before it happens. Relevant comments. Somebody said, did she acknowledge that the touching by her was inappropriate? I do not see how she could not have recognized how touchy they were and her lack of physical touch with you. Like many others have said, I am not sure Jordan was being completely honest with you. Did you ask here how she would have felt in a reverse situation? If the three of you meet again, you might want to think about excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or something during the meal, and instead hide and film their interaction while you are gone. See if Jordan changes how she interacts when you are not there. I say to capture it on your phone because then you have it to show her if you break up. If she interacts appropriately while you are gone, then she may have gotten the message. She should also start limiting her interactions with him, phone, text, because that relationship is not healthy, and no SO should have to deal with that if you two get married. It needs to be dealt with now. Original poster replied. She did acknowledge that all the touching was inappropriate, yes. When she actually thought back on how much they were doing it and how over the top it was, she was embarrassed and realized she shouldn't have started acting like that just because Mark makes it seem normal. I didn't ask her how she'd feel in the reverse situation because it seemed like she got it immediately as soon as I told her how it made me feel. If the three of us are ever together again, I'll definitely be watching everything, but I don't think there's a chance of that happening for a while.